Welcome back for episode 13 of Shadow School. I'm your host, Brina Lise Miller. We were supposed to do 13 yesterday, and yesterday life happened. And so today we're doing 13, but I did commit to do 64 days of Shadow School in a row. And so I think I'm probably going to be doubling up and doing dose episodes tomorrow, which is going to be just like a lovely day of really diving in. Today, we are focused on Gene Key 13. And what I think is really fascinating is that my worlds are colliding right now. I spent this morning for work diving into a deep dive workshop and then even went live on LinkedIn a little bit earlier today through our company page, Habits at Work, focusing on the concept of listening empathically. And the Gene Key that I was supposed to focus on today, but now yesterday, but now we're focused on today, is going to dive us into the concepts of listening and empathy, which is, of course, just how everything always works out. And so here we are today, Gene Key 13, Shadow of Discord, Gift of Discernment. So we're building on discrimination that we just covered this weekend. Now we're focused on discernment as the gift, which requires a lot of listening. And the divine gift, is empathy today. This is a beautiful one. So please get yourself some chocolate-covered strawberries. Hello, Valentine's Day. Pour yourself a luxurious cup of cacao. I know I've got mine right here in my amazing Raven cup here. It's very luxurious today also. It's got spiced sugar. It's got some frothed nut pods in it. It's a little bit extra. And I think that's perfect for today's conversation. I've also got my amazing new Walmart find, my rainbow light, if you saw me post about that on Instagram. And I did indeed, thank you, Miley, buy myself flowers at the grocery store yesterday. So here they are in all of their glory. So you're sitting with me here in my environment, my cacao, my flowers, my rainbow light, and we are ready to roll into Gene Key 13. And this is really focused on the theme of listening, and listening through love today is what we're going to dive into. But first, of course, we always start in the shadow, which is where we have some fears at play, some coping mechanisms, some protections, some distance barrier, boundary setting mechanisms. And we're diving into discord today with the dilemma of pessimism. So let's just hop right in. This discord, according to the Gene Keys, is the inability to listen to and learn from our experiences in the world. The inability for us to listen to our own experiences and our own past and learn from them, but also to learn from what's going on in the lives of others, to see others' patterns and learn, to see patterns of the collective playing out and learn in society. You know, an example of this and why we have so much discord at a collective global level right now in this shadow is that we can see that what we've been doing is not having a great impact on us, on society, on the earth. And one example of this is how much our consumption of things, material goods, harms the earth and harms other humans. And yet we're like rolling. We're rolling on this pattern. And it's really difficult to rise up out of it and to see and to learn from this pattern and to choose differently and to do differently. In fact, we're so ingrained in this pattern, it doesn't even feel like there's an alternative available to us to rise up out of it. And in fact, that creates then this sense of hopelessness and an overall feeling of pessimism, like even if you could change it, it wouldn't change. Or even if your behavior changed, the situation wouldn't change. And that's where we get that dilemma of pessimism through this discord frequency of not learning, of watching, knowing, and not learning, not changing, not adapting and evolving from our experience as humans. And listening here is not something we do with our ears. It's something we do with our entire being. It's an awareness on its own. It requires our whole being. And it also requires that we process our past in a way that we can consciously create our present and learn from it and create and shape the future instead of just bringing the past continuously into this present moment, which then creates more of it in the future. So we've got this global frequency of discord. And it's really interesting, this concept of listening being something that we do with our whole being and experience in life. And humans in this shadow level are really filled with a lot of distrust. We don't trust ourselves. We don't trust others. And when we see what should be done differently or what could be done differently, when we see opportunities to learn from our experiences and we don't actually then change or enact things or choose differently, then it fosters this distrust. It fosters a sense of dissonance and discord because it's like a rolling, right? It just keeps rolling and building on itself. And we hear it. It's like we're hearing it, but we're not listening to it. We might mentally be aware of it, but we're not embodying something different. Our beingness isn't changed. And often this is really fueled by how much pressure we have related to time, related to external pressures, and we have these short-term agendas, things that we want, our desires in life, and our inability to make choices in the present that have us have a longer term view on life continue to roll this discord and this inability to choose differently, because what we're doing in the moment is we're always really just reacting to our desire in the moment, or our short-term gain, or our short-term want. And society and business has taught us and reinforced this over and over and over again. We're focused on creating money now as opposed to building value in an economic system, building value on the earth. We're focused on what we can extract now so that we can get things and make more money, instead of looking at the impact we're creating on the earth. We're focused on numbing a behavior now or giving ourselves the coffee now, instead of looking at then what's going to happen to our energy later in the day, or how exhausted we'll be, or how disconnected we'll be from our body later, focused on just immediate desires and having them met. Even though we know, we have a sense of knowing and understanding that what we actually want to create in life, what we actually want to have in life, is something much different. But we can't seem to choose. We can't seem to listen and learn about our short-term behaviors and desires being met so that we can be more aligned with the things that actually matter to us, with things that are actually good for us and the earth and society. And so we have this huge sense of discord, this pessimism that grows in our society. And this happens when, this is a quote I wrote down to share, this pessimism emerges when we no longer believe collectively that we can surmount our own nature and create a truly peaceful world. Now, we have whole generations of human beings that are inheriting problems that we have created because we've been pursuing short-term desires. And we've been sowing these seeds of discord for as long as we can tell, right? But it's been especially hastened and quickened up, and I would say like exponentially grown through capitalism and through the last, couple hundred years, especially the last 100 years, with technology and in the way that we're showing up in business and in life. And we've got this whole generation that's coming through. They're starting to become adults and they're looking around and they're saying, the house is on fire. Why am I worried about going to school? Or the house is on fire. Why are we talking about this thing. We're like, not it. And what happens is we have so much dissonance. They're looking around and seeing the real problems they're inheriting. And everyone else is still playing at getting their short-term desires satiated. And you have to imagine that this creates such an overwhelming feeling of hopelessness and pessimism that we cannot collectively even see and honestly look at what we are creating, let alone fix it. So this is the shadow that we're operating here in the 13th gene key. This inability to listen and to learn from what we're doing in our past experience. And we have a repressive state and a reactive state, of course, expressing the shadow. The repressive state is always that inwardly turned life coming back out from the externality of our life, internal. There's a collapsing inward. And here we have the state of being permissive. And this looks like when people pretend to be empathetic, they pretend to understand, they pretend to listen, they pretend to have sympathy for, but ultimately they're not actually listening. They're making a show of listening. They're pretending to listen. They're pretending to get it and to learn. But there's a lack of backbone here. We let others still kind of continue to perpetrate patterns and we never learn from them. There's no boundary here at all. And so people in this state of permissive allow a lot. They always agree with others. They always allow the opinions of others. They allow the externalities to overwhelm them. Even if they might secretly be learning and listening, it's like they can't do anything as a result. There's no backbone. So they're stuck kind of in this energy of my learning doesn't matter, my listening doesn't matter, and the listening then just goes away. It's the shell of listening. And then they tend to cut themselves off emotionally. They repress a lot of emotion. And as a result of repressing emotion, they no longer experience pain, but they also no longer experience pleasure. But it does create this false sense of comfort and safety here. And that's what we see in permissive. It's just kind of like a resigned, like letting everything happen in your life. So you can see there's this victim mentality here. And then when we look at the reactive state here, which is, again, always more like venting anger, it's more extroverted in nature, it's expressed and projected outward from oneself, we get to the state of narrow-minded. So in the shadow of discord, the reactive expression is narrow-minded. And unlike permissive, where we're kind of just like kind of agreeing and going along with everything and not really standing up for anything and not really pointing out where we could be learning, because we're just like letting it all pass by and happen. We're like a passenger in the seat of life. Narrow-minded is actively locked in and engaged into every battle and war it could possibly be engaged in, even situations that do not call for it. And narrow-minded, this is where like bigotry comes from. When we're in the narrow-minded expression of the shadow of discord, we disagree with everything. This is like being such an antagonist in every situation. You're like always kind of digging for conflict and creating conflict. So here people are stuck in a very reactionary emotional pattern. It's really expressed outward. They're filled with pessimism. They think the world is just totally screwed and that everyone's wrong and everyone's got it wrong. And so everything is kind of a fight and they're digging their heels in. They're not trying to use their energy toward changing. They just want to argue about what's wrong. That's what we find here in narrow-minded. They're not even open up to the possibility of change. And then as a result, we get resentful and bitter, and we really sink in. And it almost becomes a sense of personal mission to kind of take down anyone that is optimistic about wanting to change and learn from their listening. Have you ever experienced someone in your life that's like this, that's operating out of this repress or this reactive state of the shadow, where they're just like shooting holes? through all of the best laid plans. They're shooting holes through all of the potential, the possibility, the optimistic outlook. Nothing can be changed here. Not open even to the possibility of change, but we want to fight and dig in and pick apart everything that is wrong regardless. That's what is happening here in the reactive and the repressive states of the shadow of discord. What's required here is that we listen with our hearts to our hearts. And as we move into the gift out of the shadow, the gift is discernment, which is really where we start to acquire the skill to listen with and to our heart instead of with and to our mind. Listening with and listening to our mind is what keeps us a little bit stuck in this pessimistic shadow of discord. It's where we have all these reasons for not trusting, these reasons for seeing the world how we think it is. We might often hear people talk about, you're not in reality, or you're not in the real world. And their real world is rooted in this discord with no possibility of change. But when we learn the skill of discernment and the ability to actually listen from the heart and listen to the heart and with our heart, we can have more awareness of emotions. We can have, therefore, more awareness of patterns. We can begin to demystify our own past and look at it more objectively and ultimately with more love. And what happens is we're much more grounded and we have more ability to listen, not to hear with the mind, but to listen with the entire being and through the heart. And that allows us to soften our personal agendas, which are often very tied to those short-term desires that we explored in the shadow, that really cause a lot of this discord because they keep us stuck in these patterns. When we're not running after satiating short-term desires, we can open up into and relax into the fact that those desires are often driven externally anyway. They're not actually coming from the core of us. And so we soften the need to have an agenda at all. We start to cultivate a lot more trust in general in ourselves and other people, in the bigger picture, in the natural world. And here is where we learn, like, we're part of something. And we can start to then kind of deconstruct all these patterns, these coping mechanisms, these behaviors and habits that no longer serve us anymore because we're able to actually listen and learn from our past. We're aware of desires, they don't go away, but we're not victim to them. We can put a pause and see, where is this desire coming from? Is it actually coming from deep within my heart? Or is it something that I'm like picking up because I just saw some flashy new thing come through my Instagram ad, and now I want that thing. And so we develop more awareness here. We develop more discernment, which is really understanding and listening to our heart and knowing what's true for us, as opposed to being influenced and swayed by external and the mind. So we're no longer stuck in these patterns. We're no longer seeing like we can see more the movie of our life playing out. We can see more the reality that our mind has constructed and the collective mind has constructed. And we can kind of start to tinker with it here. We can discern what is true for us and what isn't. We can start responding instead of reacting on default. And here is where we start, through discernment, to be a conscious creator in our life, a co-creator with life, really. And when we do that, we begin to have more optimism. So our discernment, which the Gene Key says is listening through osmosis with our entire being, our heart and soul. When we can start to practice that skill, we have more optimism. We begin to vibrate higher. We feel higher. We have a higher purpose in life. We're aligned with our inner values, our ideals that we're living our life through. And when we can listen this way, we can emanate our energy this way. And we have more hope and optimism, and that can ripple out into the world. Now, it's not to say that that's necessarily going to shift everyone around you that's still seeing the world in a very pessimistic way, a narrow-minded way, a permissive way where they're just kind of like letting it all pass them by and happen to them. That doesn't mean that just because you're optimistic or you're more discerning and you're developing this skill or you're able to see your patterns, that other people are going to instantly change as well and get there with you. But what it does do is it opens the crack of the door. It allows them to have an interrupt in the pattern of their normal experience with you. Where you are maybe a little bit more discerning, you're learning, you're choosing to respond differently. And as a result, it opens the door for them to be able to do the same. Doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen. So let go of the agenda of that. Keep showing up in a discerning way. Keep showing up listening. Keep showing up. I love here that as I was contemplating this Gene Key, I was making a connection back to Gene Key 7. And if you remember, Gene Key 7 is all about being a good guide, the gift of guidance, and the city of virtue as a leader. And that's where we get to like ideals. And I was thinking to myself, like, if we're in discernment here, if we're dropping our own agendas, if we're really learning to listen was one of those skills that a good guide, a good leader has. They don't have all the answers, but what they can do is they can listen. They can shift the energy in a group. They can create more harmony. They can create more space. So we can only become a good guide, according to Gene Key 7, if we can listen. And here, this means also listening and learning. So it's discernment, but it's also listening and unlearning, perhaps, our own opinions, our own patterns, our own agendas in life. And when we can kind of put a pause on those, be much more objective about them, we can be a better guide for ourselves and for other people. We can hold more space for ourselves to change and see things differently, to be differently, to practice new ways of being, and we can do that for others. And then we merge into the city of empathy. So this is the divine gift of empathy. This is where we're not just perceiving through the heart or through the mind bits of information, but we are experiencing existence in the world as something else. And that's how the Gene Keys is looking at the concept of empathy. Empathy is a death of the separate self that reveals an underlying nature of humanity. That's what the Gene Key says is empathy. That goes well beyond how we view empathy in our psychological constructs of the mind, which is all about being able to understand and kind of feel into how someone else is feeling, being able to see into and understand and grasp fully and stand in the experience of someone else and what they're grappling with or what they're feeling in the moment, being able to sit with them in that experience. That's part of it. But what I love about how the Gene Keys describes this is that in order to actually experience, we have to be that thing. And so we go from being person A and person B, and we're having empathy with person B, to there are not two people here. There is only one. And we are being the experience of that one together. And so empathy is, at this level of understanding, a death of separation back into unity. So it says here, sympathy requires two people or two beings, and empathy demands one. So it demands that we get inside of an experience, and we have to connect back into unity that way. I love this. So it's like we can't just be observing the butterfly, for example. We have to be the butterfly to experience the butterfly. That means we have to dissolve all of this and be the butterfly, be the one thing that is all things. It's just so beautiful. And here we do get into the ability to sit in the presence of a person who is in true empathy in the citic state, and they heal you simply by listening to you. Said differently, they're not doing it to you. By sitting in the presence of someone who can dissolve the separation to experience a oneness with you. We are healed as we are listened to. So listening is no longer then something we're doing that's a passive act. It's not like information is falling on us and we're just sitting in it. It's a forceful auric cleansing. It's a force field of energy in a way. It's a healing, connective, unifying field of energy. I want to leave us today with a quote that I actually discovered maybe about a year ago as I was doing research around empathic listening, because this is one of the topics that I've had the amazing opportunity to create courses around for leaders and salespeople in my career. It is, to this day, still my very favorite topic at work that I get to bring to life. But I discovered this quote that just really hits home for me, and it hits home for this particular gene key. So in 1941, this woman, Brenda Euland, wrote an article in the Ladies' Home Journal. This is like 80 years ago. This woman, Brenda, wrote an article called Tell Me More. And her article was about the desirability of listening carefully. And I've taken a couple of bits out of her article and quoting and strung them together. So this is what Brenda writes. Listening is a magnetic and strange thing, a creative force. The friends that really listen to us are the ones we move toward, and we want to sit in their radius as though it did us good, like ultraviolet light, ultraviolet rays. This is the reason. When we are listened to, it creates us, makes us unfold and expand. Ideas actually begin to grow within us and come to life. Have you ever had the experience of listening to yourself or listening to others or being listened to, where you are able to finally clarify and articulate an idea or a concept or put some definition around something you were feeling because you had the space to speak it into existence? Speaking is a creative force, but it needs a field to exist into. So think about this. Speaking is like the yang force. It's like the divine masculine. It's like light. It creates. And listening is like the divine feminine, the yin field that brings and holds matter into existence. It holds it into a material field. That's what listening is. If speaking is creating, listening is the field for the creation to exist. I think that I just want to pause here for a second with you, because there is such a gift in listening that we can give to others and to ourselves. When we listen to our bodies and our hearts, when we listen to our minds and learn from them, when we can hold space and listen to others and allow them to speak their world into existence, there's so much power in listening. But it's a receptive, soft field of power. And this empathy that has us dissolve into one to fully experience the other. Beautiful, beautiful. And this gift of discernment that allows us to listen with our hearts and through our hearts, from our hearts, to our hearts, which really here we're talking about our soul. We're talking about our higher self. So today I want you to think about, where are you listening to your soul or your heart versus where are you listening to your mind or from your mind? Are there areas in life where you are just kind of agreeing and letting things pass you by? Are there areas in life where, but you know you could learn and do differently? Are there areas in your life where you are reactive and you are poking holes in every option and you are pessimistic about the outlook, but also like judging others' optimistic view of what's possible? Where are you holding back there? How might you listen more to your heart and through your heart? How might you lean into listening with your entire beingness, not just your mind or your ears, but to be present and to pay full attention to what's happening inside, your emotional responses and reactions, to harness your ability to co-create and respond to the world instead of reacting on default. And from that place, how can you align yourself and your responses, your ways of being and acting, the things that you do and say and think, how you listen in general, to your values, to your heart, to your soul, so that whenever you are tempted by short-term desire, or someone shoots down an idea, or is pessimistic about the outlook of something that you want to create, you know, and you can discern, and you can come back to alignment with this, what it's true for you. And that's what we're focused here on 13, in the 13th gene key. So on the day of Valentine's in the US, where we are focused on romantic love, which is something that we kind of explored, like romantic love versus divine love in a recent gene key. Where can you love yourself by having more discernment, by actually listening to and learning from your past and your emotions? And that's what I'll leave you with. And then I want to share with you. So that's it. Whoop, Gene Key 13. And then I do want to share with you, because I kind of teased this at the beginning for Instagram, but not necessarily LinkedIn, that I'm working on a fun project where I am recording audios of the Gene Keys library in a way that I bring a level of interpretation to the different Gene Keys, explain how the system works, explain how your chart works, explain the different spheres, pathways, lines, Gene Keys, and I create and kind of bring together a custom playlist for you that helps you have just one resource you can go to contemplate your specific gene keys in your hologenetic profile that apply to activating your genius. So we're diving into the activation sequence, which is the first 4 gene keys in your profile. It's focused on your life's work, your purpose, your radiance, your evolution, everything about bringing your gifts and your purpose to life in this world, activating your genius. So if you're interested in the first step into working with the gene keys for yourself, not just contemplating the wisdom in general, which is what we've been doing in Shadow School, but how do you start to deepen this work with your own specific gene keys and your chart, then you might be interested in this project I'm working on. So I have the goal of creating a whole library that I can just pull from whenever someone wants one of these custom playlists. But for now, I don't have the library recorded. So I'm doing a little special collaboration with you, which is that for $66, I will prioritize recording the gene keys that are in your activation sequence as I build out the library. So you get a deal, and also I get to go and have some priority in order to which gene keys that I record first and work with first. And so you'll get this profile audio playlist for you to contemplate, but at like a really special deal because I don't know. I'm having fun with it right now. So if you're interested in that, I still don't even have a web page for it at all where you can go on and buy it. But the way I've been doing it so far is if you're interested, send me a direct message on LinkedIn or on Instagram and we can get started. You can Venmo me $66 and then within about 5 to 7 business days, boop, I'll send you your custom playlist that you can contemplate forever and continue to deepen your understanding of yourself and your gifts and the edges of where you can work and how the shadows come to life for you and how you can move into the gifts and merge into the cities and elevate your energy and live more fully aligned. So if you're interested in that, send me a message. Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow with, I believe I'm going to be doing 2 episodes tomorrow of Shadow School, which is awesome. I'm actually really excited for it. We're talking about the shadow of compromise tomorrow, which happens to be in my chart 2 times. And so I'm really, really jazzed about digging into that one with you, as well as Gene Key 15. We'll get to that too. Until tomorrow, I'll see you all then. And now I guess I get to stop talking and actually drink my somewhat cooled off cacao and enjoy the rest of February 14th and sending you so much love. Thank you for tuning in.